Alright, everybody, good morning to you all. It is currently June 9th, and I am recording this at around 9:30. We're going to be talking about upcoming convective weather patterns and even some heat later next week. So currently we are looking at the Storm Prediction Center's homepage, and let's tap in here. We have a day one outlook from them today. There is a large area with a marginal risk stretching from North Carolina all the way into the high plains in South Dakota. And then we also have an area of slight risk, a large one, Nebraska, Colorado, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and New Mexico are included within the slight risk. Today we're going to mainly want to watch out for very large hail and intense damaging wind gusts. There will be a tornado risk initially across Kansas and Nebraska, as storms are going to be more supercellular and will have enough 3 Cape and vorticity to ingest a tornado risk. I think wind and hail are going to be our main threats today, not I think they will be. Significant wind gusts are going to be possible across portions of northeast Oklahoma, western Oklahoma, including the Panhandle, the Texas Panhandle, southeast Colorado, most of Kansas, and then, very large hail will be possible across Kansas, Nebraska, maybe a little bit of eastern Colorado as well. Here's a discussion if you want to pause and read it. There is potential for 2 enhanced risks, one across this general region and one up here as well. So the potential here for there's potential for a couple areas of enhanced risk later today, or one. With the day 2 outlook, we are expecting this general MCS to continue, or maybe die down when the capping inversion gets stronger, and then kind of re-strengthen when you have more convection. This will generally continue probably from Louisiana and Oklahoma down to the Gulf Coast. There is a small chance for a brief tornado or two, but that will not be the main threat. The main threat will be wind and hail. I think there's potential that we either A, get a significant wind risk out of this day, or B, get a enhanced risk 30 non-wind, or C, a 30 sig. It's possible. Day 3, there are no severe storms expected from the SPC, but I'm expecting severe weather across this general region in here. Northwest flow comes in. You have enough instability to get storms to fire off, which will create an environment favorable for large hail, maybe very large hail, damaging wind gusts, and some tornado risk as well. Here's a look at what we're looking at in the middle levels of our atmosphere, middle to upper levels of our atmosphere right now. We'll go upper levels first. This is 300 millibar on the SPC's mesoscale analysis site, and we can see we have about 60 knots of mid-level flow kind of in Nebraska right now, and there's more flow kind of in the Rockies. This will kind of transfer its way this way, promoting enough forcing to get a severe weather event. I think it's a cold front today or dry line, one of the two, or both, that are going to help force the things to get severe weather to go. 500 millibar, we can see there's strong 500 millibar flow all the way from Washington, all the way out to the East Coast. This general area had strong storms this morning as as an embedded shortwave impulse pushed through. There's another embedded one across Wyoming, Nebraska that'll push through as well. Looking at our current convective instability, we already have instability driving its way northward as a warm front pushes northward across Colorado, Nebraska, and Kansas. So eventually make its way further northward. As we look at 6-hour mesoscale analysis, we can see that we'll do that. We're going to be watching for an MCS to ride the thermodynamic boundary, which is very common in the summertime. Looking at our lower level flow right now, it's pretty strong. It's pretty decent across kind of Colorado, Kansas, and it's expected to stay that way as well. Now let's go deeper, kind of go to the hodograph map into the northeast, and we can see there are favorable hodographs in place for a few strong storms this afternoon, and there is potential for showers to pop up with funnel cloud potential. Nothing that'll touch the ground or anything, because forcing is going to be too weak to really get a big storm. Here's a look at HRRR. This is going to be for later tonight. We're going to look at the 12Z run. For some reason, okay. So this is a look at what generally could happen. It's not going to give you a perfect picture, but this is 20Z, which is 3 o'clock Central Daylight Time, and we start to see a cluster of strong storms develop across Nebraska and South Dakota, maybe into Iowa as well. Another cluster kind of in New Mexico there. These will push off southward and maybe do some strengthening as well. There's going to be another area to watch in Colorado and Oklahoma Panhandle, and another area to watch in South Dakota. This cluster mainly will have a small hail threat right here. 3 maybe a small hail, strong storm threat. 1 and 2 will likely become our main focuses of the day. So cluster 1 dives southward, it weakens some, and then a new cluster kind of forms in Nebraska there and Kansas. If we take a look at a forecast sounding, it's a little bit contaminated, so I'm going to go out more probably because the anvils are so high. For the east, we can see that the hodograph is very long, not the straightest, but it'll definitely support hail, very large hail initially. Steep lapse rates aloft, along with strong instability, will definitely create a threat for that as well, with 2,000 mixed or MU cape, across the region. Now we can see these supercells start to propagate southeastward, and another cluster of strong storms forms in Oklahoma. This could be favorable for damaging wind gusts and significant damaging wind gusts as well, and then large hail as well. This is going to be the main. These are going to kind of collide across this area and become a huge mesoscale convective system, or MCS, basically a line of storms. You can see they kind of move southward a bit, and they kind of collide there in central Arkansas throughout the middle of the day, creating a huge rain blob. Now, if we go further south here, we can look at this. In a good picture, you can see this strong complex goes across the Oklahoma City area. When we start to see a complex develop with more showers and storms feeding into it, this is going to be our main focus for Friday. This is going to dive southward and become bigger, get stronger, and affect portions of Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, and maybe Alabama and the Florida Panhandle as well. We can see that a lot of storms start to form. Looks like there's an MCV type feature or mesolow that develops along the western edge, which may enhance the severe threat locally there. Looking at profiles, they're generally going to be generally top heavy profile, or not top heavy. Generally have a huge temperature dew point depression. This is going to make D-cape very high as we have inverted V profiles. Wind shear is not the greatest, but this is your kind of classic wet microburst type of setup. Nice 21 knots there, 6 kilometers as well, which will favor a risk for damaging wind gusts. As we get further southward, or actually as we get into this area, we might have a small tornado threat across northeastern Louisiana along the warm front here, and yeah, that's going to be the case. You can see hodographs are a bit more enlarged across this region. We have a bit more low helicity with around 100 or so. You also have 3 cape upwards of 70 joules per kilogram, a lot higher because your dew point and your temperature are a lot closer. You're 74 and 86 rather than 66 on 99, and the dew point depression here is 12. You can see extreme instability is going to be in play as well, and steep lapse rates. Now, there is still a lot of D-capes, so storms will probably tend to be outflow dominant, but if we can get a circulation to wrap around, we could see a tornado threat as well. And any storms that form out ahead of the line may pose a tornado risk as well. It just depends on how much low will shear. That one would not pose a tornado risk, maybe wind, and it'll probably collapse quickly. See, this line really starts to bow out as it gets into Mississippi there off the HRRR. You can see soundings very well support the idea of wind gusts potentially intense. And we can see it kind of dive southward into Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi as well. It's a little bit weaker wind shear across Alabama, which will probably make the threat there a little bit smaller, and the main risk across Mississippi and Louisiana a lot higher. We can see this cluster kind of survives for a bit and moves offshore. So the severest will probably end around 4 to 5 Z as the cluster moves offshore. More development does occur, but this is going to be just some weak shower activity. Looking into the southeast sector, we get a better idea for states like Alabama, Florida, what they can see. So here we go. So it looks like showers and thunderstorms are going to be possible across Florida throughout the day. Kind of your typical thing. You might have a wet microburst here or there, or a sea breeze tornado. It's been very common recently. Sea breezes can enhance the low-level shear locally and make the environment a little bit better, considering you have moderate instability across the Florida area as well. Looking into the Florida Panhandle, I think there's going to be an isolated severe risk there. Definitely not there where I took that sounding, but you can see this line of storms just pushes southward, and it's still pretty strong across portions of the Florida Panhandle. We take a sounding out ahead of this activity. Not the best, but it'll support some wind gusts, and it's going to die down once the energy the atmosphere weakens. Now, let's look at this event kind of synoptically off the wrap. We're going to look at it on the 9Z wrap. Let's look at 500 millibars. So we can see we have the belt of energy from today. It pushes into Nebraska and really starts to strengthen as we get toward 7 p.m. or 0Z. We have a belt of 60 plus knots across this area, or 50 plus knots. This is going to generally transfer into the Mississippi Delta region across throughout the day. You can see this really starts to dig in there, and we can see the MCS is going to ride the leading edge of the flow, which is going to push it southeastward there. The general MCS track is probably going to be something like this for this one. Probably be starting in Nebraska, going into Kansas, and then kind of going all the way down to the coast. Now, there's another one that forms in Colorado. It's going to be something like this, and then they kind of collide in Arkansas. They weaken for a bit, and then they re-strengthen. This will probably be the area of re-strengthening. Will probably be somewhere in here. So that's going to be something to watch. But looking as we get into the afternoon, we can see the flow really starts to kind of get into that regime there. There could be severe potential across the area behind the MCS, but there is a heavy amount of capping inversion. As we can look at the mixed layer cape, we can see there is a lot of hatching across the area, which means there's a strong cap. There will be potential for strong to severe storms in Missouri and Illinois and Kansas, where the area is uncapped. These will be mainly favorable for hail and wind potential. If we take a sounding near Springfield, Missouri area or Joplin area, it'll load for a second, but we can see the environment will be favorable for large hail, given the fact that you have decently steep lapse rates and generally moderate thermodynamic profile. It could be favorable for a tornado as well, because you have a curved photograph in the low levels a little bit there, and you also have 3 cape values of 106, which will create a lot of stretching in the low levels. Your low-level shear is a little bit weak, but it could get it done for a brief tornado. So brief tornado, isolated hail, and isolated wind is going to be the main threat in that area. Are going to be the main threats in that area. We can see, looking ahead of the MCS in kind of Louisiana there, the instability is rather strong. Your 3 cape is going to be decent as well, which will create some threat. And then looking, oh wait, there's no bulk. They don't have that bulk shear agreement. But the 700 millibar, there's going to be a 700 millibar impulse as well. That's going to, shortwave impulse, it's going to enhance the risk across this area. Now, wherever the more low-level shear will be, I think that's where you're going to be. Their tornado risk is going to be for the MCS. It's a very low tornado risk, but you can't rule out an isolated spin-up tornado with a setup like that, considering how much instability you have. Take a sounding off the wrap in central Mississippi, and I'll take a look at it in a second here. Now, this is not going to be favorable for tornadoes because of an inversion, or not an inversion, but just a warm layer at the surface and inversion there, 850 millibars, and also a lot of dry air in the low levels, suppressing the 3 cape. Upper level flow, we can see, looks like there's stronger upper level flow across this area, which will probably promote some sort of severe risk. Going into the next couple of days there, we can see this kind of sets up the upper level pattern, sets up for a severe risk across the upper plains and upper Midwest on Saturday. If we now we're not going to talk about that right now. We're going to switch over to the NSSL and talk about today's again. You can see the NSSL develops this kind of cluster of storms out in Colorado, Nebraska, New Mexico. Another cluster develops across Colorado, Nebraska, and Kansas. These will all progress southward. You can see a pretty strong supercell develops there in Nebraska. That'll be your main hail threat for today. Taking a forecast sounding ahead of your supercell, you can see that you have a long straight hodograph along with decent elevated instability, which will create the enhanced risk for that. You can see the MCS gets pretty strong across eastern Kansas, and we see another one kind of push into Arkansas. These will kind of collide, and then they'll move southward. Now, looking into this area, we're going to look at that second. For the southern plains, we can see we have a cluster of storms that develops, and it gets pretty strong across Oklahoma there, and collide with that other MCS, and we start to see strengthening mid-afternoon there. The MCS track on the NSSL is a lot different. It's more east, so the MCS track is very uncertain for tomorrow, which is probably why there's not going to be an upgrade for the severe risk for a little bit. Now let me go to the, I'm just going to put the GFS out like this, because I was looking at something else earlier. Okay, let's look at the NAM now. The 12Z run of the NAM. This is 500 millibar flow. We've already talked about this a bit. General pattern. This is Saturday, the 11th of June, and we can see here that the flow pattern sets up for severe risk of supercells across the Midwest there. Looking at your flow at 850 millibars, it gets pretty strong across Iowa and Minnesota. And then looking at your convective instability, it is pretty strong across Louisiana, or not Louisiana, Iowa, and Minnesota. This is a new parameter, bulk wind shear difference, 500 millbar to 10 meters, and we can have 40 knots across this area, which is pretty strong, which will create a kind of a stronger risk. Middle level lapse rates will also be enhanced, especially low level lapse rates across the risk area up there. I would not be surprised to see a strong thunderstorm in Louisiana. If we look at the precipitation type, which will tell us kind of where your storms are, we have a batch of strong storms developing in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and we have a batch of strong storms in Mississippi and Louisiana. Let's go take a deeper dive into the Mississippi, Louisiana stuff just for a little bit here. Yeah, you can see it forms kind of your general thunderstorms, and it gets into an MCS kind of shape. Looking at the hodograph here, you are very favorable, not really favorable for tornadoes necessarily, but wind is going to be definitely possible given that you have 1,000 decape here and your lapse rates are pretty strong in the low levels. Along with that, you have extreme instability with ML cape of over 4,000 joules per kilogram. Deep layer shear is around 25 knots, which will get the job done for wind activity as well. Looking further north, we can see that complex that develops up in Minnesota, and Iowa, and Wisconsin. A couple areas to watch. Let's take a sounding kind of in northeast Iowa ahead of the complex here. It looks like this is going to be riding some sort of boundary here. If we go to the surface and look at theta E, we do have a little bit of a boundary there. And looking at forecast soundings, you can see a very long and straight hodograph, which will be favorable for hail potential. This sounding is probably a little bit east of the main area of the greatest risk, which is probably correct. Looking more into southern Iowa there, where you have more moisture, we can see, again, long straight hodographs with moderate instability, not extreme. Deep layer shear is rather strong, along with upper level support being strong as well. Looking at the vorticity, we can see there's a vort max across southern central Minnesota, which will probably be your main focus of action where your storms will initiate. And yeah, 21Z, it strengthens that 0Z as well. It kind of tells you where your general stability lies as well. And this will probably be the area where you're going to have enhanced ingredients for severe weather, and that is true. We can see a bit better low-level shear, which will create a higher tornado risk. Lower 3 cape, which will create a higher tornado risk. You have a little bit of an inverted V profile in the low levels. You still have moderate instability throughout the atmosphere. And your hodograph looks pretty supportive for hail and tornadoes as well. Now, looking at the next day, which is day 4, there might be severe potential here as well. Generally looking, we can see we have a vort max that appears across northwest Iowa, kind of the South Dakota region, and there's another one that appears in Colorado and Kansas as well. Looking at your theta E, it's very warm across the U.S. Temperatures get into the 90s and even 100 in some areas. Dew points are at the 70s, which is going to create a mucky atmosphere, and potential for severe weather as well along the northern end. There's a sounding in northern Iowa. Here's a sounding in central Nebraska. And this will very much favor potential for severe weather across this region. That is a very large photograph. Into Nebraska, this is going to be a more microburst, not really microburst, more of a downburst scenario, maybe some hail as well. Dew point depressions might be a little dry for hail at the surface, but it's definitely dry, it's definitely favorable enough for hail and wind there. You can see the more low-level shear appears across Iowa, where you're going to have a higher tornado risk. And substantial veering in the low levels will also create enhancement of your low-level shear, which we can see very clearly. Looking at your 500 millibar pattern, you can see that the general amount of flow kind of restricts itself to the Midwest there, which will probably create a higher severe risk across Iowa, Minnesota, South Dakota, and Minnesota. And again, that vort max is going to appear. Oh, that's 500 millibar, but you can see there's definitely an area of vorticity with the trough that kind of comes in there, short wave impulse. Looking at that event on the GFS, at an hour 90, we can see GFS is a low pressure on Wyoming. It has a similar setup, except the NAM has, I think the NAM has a low pressure more into the actual risk area. If we take a forecast sounding kind of along the northern edge of this here, it's supportive for severe weather for sure. Looking at your 500 millibar, pretty similar. So I would expect some sort of severe potential across this general area as well. Now, looking a little bit further into next week, we can look at Monday, and there's going to be a couple areas to watch on Monday. There's going to be a good-sized trough that ejects into the northern plains, which will create severe potential across this general area, and then a shortwave impulse across the Midwest, which could create a significant severe risk. We'll have to watch that closely and watch the trends of that, as models have just started picking up on that. And then Tuesday, there's going to be a huge trough that comes in the upper Midwest, creating severe potential across Minnesota. And when looking into the dew points there, yeah, that severe potential will exist across Minnesota, Iowa, Kansas, and Oklahoma as well. Maybe into Illinois and Iowa, but the best forcing is going to be removed from those areas. Looking into the next day there, it looks like a round of strong storms is going to be possible across the Midwest again. There's another strong belt of energy across Illinois, Iowa, and Wisconsin, which will create enhanced risk for a more enhance the risk of severe weather. Looking a little bit further out off the GFS, it looks like we're going to get into more of a heat pattern with potential for MCSs riding the northern edge as we get strong amounts of moisture. Looking into the GFS precipitation type, we can see that it's pretty quiet except across the southern U.S. Now, looking into the Euro, we can look at the Euro here. We'll just take a little bit of a a loop of it. It's the 0Z Euro run. And we can see here that the pattern will generally support impulses of severe storms across the United States over the next few days. Monday, it looks like severe potential will be possible across the Midwest and up in the northern plains. Thursday, that's Tuesday, it looks like there's going to be two areas. The central plains here with this low pressure system and the northern plains here with that system. And as we move it along, we can see both systems start to really go intensify. Looks like there's going to be potential on Wednesday of a long cold front across the United States, creating potential for strong storms. And then Thursday, the Northeast might get some strong storms. Now, that will do it for this video. This is your weather breakdown for June 9th, 2022. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Any suggestions, leave them in the comments as well. And I will see you in the next one.